Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legacies. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Literally picking up where last week's episode left off. Once, okay, we're cutting back to the party. Obviously, we're going back in time a little bit. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then, we see Hope walking up to the gate. I was like, oh, so you guys were back. I was like, okay, because they were sure whether they were in a different prison world or still in the prison world, but Hope came back through. No one recognized her, and it's like, okay. She's like, it's like, by the way, who are you? She's like, it's a long story. So she's in front of Alaric, Caleb, Lizzie, and Josie, and having to explain everything, which is obviously the complete stark opposite of the way things went down last time, because obviously she kind of had to hide who she was. Granted, considering the circumstances of what happened to Landon, it's kind of like, I need your guys' help. We need to get on top of this quick, fast, so there's no going about things. I mean, also she knows how upsetting that was for everyone later on, when it was just yeah, you kind of went, you should have told us who you really were. Obviously, it seems like not all the memories are fully back. I think she explained a lot of stuff, but I think everyone... Well, because there's certain gaps in people's memory, because later on, Alaric uses the therapy box, and she's like, yeah, I remember. It almost made it seem like he didn't remember. But obviously, I like the 3-week time skip, and just I gotta go through this again. It's like, damn, is there really no way around this Malivore? Once you go inside of Malivore, and there's no... Everyone ends up forgetting you. Hell, we were in the prison world, but I guess it's it wipes people's memories. Which I think that's interesting, that Malivore is that powerful enough that even in a prison world, it can still wipe away everyone. I guess because in its own right, it is a prison world. So once again, I think it's interesting how its rules kind of clash with the rules of a prison. Regardless. So now they're kind of desperate to find a way to bring Landon back. But then there was a divide. There was a... One particular thing is basically something that can basically grant your deepest desire, your most impossible wish. So you have Alaric and Hope looking into it, and they run into a guy who sells this stuff named Pinky. Which interestingly enough, didn't Pinky play a character named Pinky in the movie Push? That might be the same actor. It might not be. It's been so long since I've seen that movie. I really like the movie, but it's been years since I've seen it. I need to rewatch it at some point in time. But that's why I was like, I could have sworn he played a character named Pinky in Push, but like I said, I could be mistaken. Not too ready to give over his this particular item, to the point Hope was using a death spell on him. She's like, I wasn't going to do anything. I just wanted to scare him. He's like, well, and Alaric's like, well, you were scaring me. So he ends up tranking her and knocking her out, while home dude Pinky makes off with his car. We also learned some interesting things in between episodes happen too, in the sense that, hey, Mac decided to leave Mystic Falls. Maya went with her, but Ethan decided to stay because it's they already have a QB, so he's staying, at the very least he's staying, at Mystic Fall High, which is interesting. It's he's like, Alaric was like, I wanted to be at least a little more honest, but honesty isn't always a big hugger, which I think is interesting in the grand scheme of things, that out of anybody who's been in that sheriff position, Caroline's mom is the only one who I think has handled it the best. Granted, yes, Matt hasn't, because of his whole complicated relationship with the supernatural world, it made him super jaded, so he wasn't handling it the best way either. He was kind of, honestly, being a bit of a power-tripping dick about it, but, it's, understandable considering everything. But, considering everything, like I said, Caroline's mom balanced it really well. So it's a lot for any normal human to handle, kind of having it thrown at you all at once to a certain extent. So, like I said, Caroline's mom kind of had time to kind of, I think, weave into it a little bit. To have more of a support group with it, so regardless, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I'm wondering, is there going to be any bringing that back? It's things were good. I mean, to be fair, they had to come, it was ups and downs for their relationship. So honestly, we'll see whether or not Mac decides to come back or not. Maybe she needs time to process it, and then eventually she'll come back. Who knows? We'll kind of have to wait and see on that front. It's actually interesting because this episode is all about kind of accepting kind of things, because obviously Hope is adamant about finding Landon. I mean, the school ended up getting shut down, except for some key people. No one's at the school right now. It's kind of on break until they figure things out. Lizzie's dealing with the whole fact is that, hey, Josie's going to the Salvatore, not going to Salvatore school anymore. She's trying to go to Mystic Falls, obviously, for a while. She's also got to deal with the whole Alyssa and MG thing, where it's also that, because it's like it's the same problem, and I brought this up last episode that was going to be an issue. Not only does she not have MG and Lizzie, Lizzie doesn't have MG or Josie, but two people who are very important to her. Obviously, MG's going to go to like some pool party with Alyssa, but it's like, oh, he's like, do you need help or anything? And it's like, okay, yeah, I could use your help with something. So she's astral projecting into the prison world, but like obviously it's like because they're astral projecting, no one can see them, but obviously we see some familiar faces amongst Malivor's monsters, and obviously the world is a train wreck because Malivor's probably just been pumping out one monster after the other, which I would assume he's out and about just killing the necromancer over and over again, because obviously nothing in that world can die, because if you die you just keep coming back. So the necromancer's probably getting killed like over and over again, because that's the last time we saw Malivore was him going after him. But regardless, Lizzie's using this as an excuse to be like, oh, we're looking for Landon, but truth be told, she's trying to find an answer to, it's not just about Josie, it's about MG, because she wanted to make an excuse to have MG spend time with her, because she kind of wanted, I think she's trying to figure out a workaround this whole thing, because even MG being like, have you actually told Josie how you feel about her actually going to school? Is like, she's like, in my own way, which I love that she phrased it that way, basically like some emotional manipulation. And so this, she's being subtle emotional manipulation. Subtle manipulation and emotional terrorism is the exact wording she used. And she was like, so no. And so it's a situation of like, once again, she's trying to like, Lizzie's kind of going about a roundabout way of, rather than kind of telling people how she really feels, she's just kind of like, because she's trying to hold on to Josie because she doesn't want to let Josie go. But it doesn't just apply to Josie, it applies to MG too. But in this particular case, and even MG talks about it later on, he stood up to Josie. I mean, he stood up to Lizzie, that it's like, okay, if I'm not here to find Landon, then I'm gonna go. But she was like, no, you're not gonna go anywhere until, like, because she needed some answers, and he was like, if you can find the answer to that question, why you're not okay with it, and why you're not why you can't bring yourself to even admit how you really, but luckily they ended up talking things out, and it made her realize, that she needs to be more receptive to like, like she's not as receptive to like other people's happiness, that that she's not as okay with it as she wants to make it seem like. And I thought it was interesting, and it's like, especially because because obviously she's like, but really her realizing like, yeah, this isn't always just about Josie, it's about you and Alyssa too. I wish I had gotten to her before she had gotten to you. And it's like, oh, before she destroyed the Ascendant. And Lizzie's like, sure, because it's it's like I said, the people that she cares about a lot, her sister, who's kind of like her other half, and the person that she has strong feelings for. Once again, it's like, because she always thought MG would be there when she was ready, and when she is ready, he gets taken by Alyssa. Amongst anybody, I think that stings the most. Because because I think probably Lizzie, probably in her mind too, it's like, but it's like, who am I, as long as MG's happy, that's all, it's still a hard pill to swallow. And I think for her, she just wasn't really, so like the entire experience was just her just kind of using an excuse for him to help her. That way he wasn't spending time with Alyssa, but also, maybe give her time to kind of figure things out, figure out her own feelings, and figure out how to say what she wants to say. But even in the end, she's admitting how she feels about the Josie thing, but not how she does about the MG thing. But I think when it's all said and done, I think, because MG's somewhat perceptive, but I think he could be a little, like, aloof to certain things too. But I think he picked up on what she was saying, because the moment he came back out, like, once she was like, okay, you can go, and let him out of the astral projection. In that moment, he was looking at her like, I think he played dumb, like he didn't know what that was all about, but I think he knows kind of what Lizzie was implying, but I guess he didn't want to kind of get his hopes up, because he's also with Alyssa, so it's not much he can do about that. That in detail about her destroying the Ascendant was interesting. It's like, apparently she did that without telling anyone. It's like, why would she do that? I guess it's just kind of like, well, I don't know whether that was her actually trying to do the right thing, and it's like, oh, I didn't think we'd actually need it, because now they can't actually go to the prison world. But I mean, to be fair, Lizzie can astral project, but still, it's not actually being there. But I think it's obviously safer because it leaves less opportunity. Maybe that's the reason why she did it, because it's like, doesn't want to take the chance that Malivore might come back. But it's like, well, you kind of did that without letting anyone know, first and foremost. So it's just like she's kind of doing a lot of that. Now apparently there's the pool party in question, and like Caleb shows up there, but lo and behold, who does he find? A naked Jed. And it's like, at first I was like, wait, is this whole Alyssa thing supposed to be like a thing of like, yeah, she's with MG, but it's like thing of, oh, she's not really fine being confined to one boyfriend type of thing. Like I'm curious, is that what that's kind of set up to be, where she's like, oh, I thought, I don't know. I would have thought it would just been like but I don't know. Maybe because that's what I'm trying to understand. Like, either that's just him trying to, I guess that was more so than anything, it was him trying to, the way Caleb made it seem like it wasn't necessarily like that. It seemed like it was more so like, apparently Jed trying to make a move, but I don't know. Because Caleb walks in, he was like, whoa, maybe MG, maybe you shouldn't come to the party, because he sees Jed standing there naked. But then he later on meets up with MG, and it's like, and I thought that was a nice bro moment they had. Like, it's very, which is interesting, because obviously, I think, Caleb and Jed definitely kind of already had that, it's very befitting. They have a very Damon and Stefan relationship, but I think obviously you see that a little bit with Caleb and MG as well. Like, obviously that's probably an even more fitting version of that relationship dynamic between like Stefan and Damon in many different regards. You can definitely just personality wise, MG is very much to Stefan and Caleb is definitely to Damon, so it was actually very befitting for him to play Damon. But regardless, him feeling like bad, because he was like, because I was so focused on the whole trying to help Dr. Saltzman and Hope, I wasn't there when you needed me, so he's like, we're supposed to be family. Like, I made a promise to you that we were family, so it's like, Landon is gone, I can't do anything about that, but what I can do about it, I've spent so much time focusing on something I can't do anything about, rather than just something I could. So he was kind of losing a little hope of like not holding out hope, But MG's kind of like, I'll be more assertive, at least kind of sticking up for myself. And, because he brings up, hey, I stood up to Lizzie, in my own way, and in a gentlemanly way. But it's like, standing on his, standing up to people, because MG doesn't always stand up to people. But it's like standing up to her, so I will try to say no more often, but you try to say yes more, So I thought that was kind of a neat moment that they ended up having. But even that moment from MG being like, I was dating Maleficent, like, what do I expect? Like, I don't know whether that's supposed to be a thing of like, yeah, she's kind of got her own way about her, like, I'm just curious to see what that means. Like I said, my interpretation of that might be a thing of, for her, it's like she doesn't want to be confined to just one person. Maybe that's what that is. Or maybe relationships might be something that's still new to her, so being, maybe she's so used to kind of getting her way when it comes to certain situations that I don't know. I'm curious to see how MG's going to handle that, because I think, like I said, I think he picked up on like how Lizzie feels, so that might bring things into question too. It might complicate things. We'll see. Like I said, just because Alyssa handled things the way she has, destroying the Ascendant and stuff, like we'll see. But another aspect to this episode is Hope going inside of the therapy box, and obviously her going in there by herself. I like what it did. It basically manifested itself as a horror movie, and I thought that was an 80s horror movie. It's very much like a, if anything, it's very much a Friday the 13th, homage. And slowly but surely, like, it kills Lizzie, then Ethan, and each one trying to say something, because obviously Lizzie's bringing up the fact is of like, oh yeah, like, because obviously Hope's looking for Landon, and I love her just like chewing her gum, like obnoxiously sticking it on like the bed and being like, oh, like you and Landon like banged it out or whatever. But she's bringing up like, oh, what it did to Josie, like, how much that kind of hurt them kind of breaking up. Then obviously Ethan being like, oh, I'm right here, like, Hope, you're so focused on love, like, love kind of can kind of be like a passerby type of situation, in the sense of like, if you're so focused on one thing, you're not going to see, other opportunity, other things in front of you with that are wide open. And she was basically like, I don't have time to unpackage this football metaphor you're making. Then Josie, which that was an interesting one where Josie was like, no, you typically try to solve the problem and run towards trying to fix the problem, and Josie's like, I run away from it, which I think being a little true to the characters, but also I think that's also could make the argument maybe that's how Hope's perception of things are. But once again, some gnarly, once again, I think some horror movie deaths, pitchfork through the stomach, put you in a sleeping bag and smashed you against some trees. There was also a little element, and Josie getting pulled into the water and not seeing what happened. But like I said, just an interesting aesthetic they went for that. Really quickly, since I was bringing up Josie, I thought it was interesting, but she was like, oh yeah, I don't eat bacon anymore subsequently since being a pig in the season 2 finale. I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like, oh, that would, change your perspective on certain things, I'm sure. But for the reveal, obviously she goes back to school and everyone's dead, and when it finally came down to it, she confronted them all. It wasn't until after the Josie thing that I was like, it's going to be Landon, isn't it? She's running from Landon, who's actually the killer, and she ends up killing him, and I'm like, oh, I thought it was going to end there, but then he pops up and he's like, oh, okay, oh, that's the Hope I know and love. And obviously this whole giant thing is a metaphor for the fact is, because she's so focused on saving Landon, everyone else she cares about could potentially fall to the wayside, in many different regards. And obviously that's something she didn't want to deal with, to the point that even when she got the word to release her from everything, from the therapy box, she refused to use it. She's willing to be, in this moment, it's like, I'm going to be selfish. I don't care about a metaphorical situation of saving everyone. It's like, I'm going to put my love, my love for you first, because even if this isn't a real you, at least this is the closest I can get. I think it's interesting because obviously we know that she's dealt with metaphorical Landons in the first place, because obviously there's been the Landon that's been in her head, with the whole Josie situation, or the Landon that from season 1 that she was trying to understand why he did what he did. So this isn't the first time something of this similar nature has happened. So I thought that was kind of fascinating how this was held. When she actually got pulled out, I actually was thinking she was still inside the therapy box and it manifested itself that way just to kind of make her think she was out when she wasn't. But no. Also shows you how desperate she is, to the point she did what she did to Pinky, but also she was attacking Alark. But he understands the pain she's going through, so it's hey, which he ended up getting the item. Because I love what he was threatening Pinky. It's this bat. It's I've actually gotten pretty good at it. He's no matter how much I smash it against things, it won't break. So it's you're going to get this bat one way or another, So, and at one point, Pinky picks it up and tries to attack Alark. It didn't look like Alark got hurt, so Alark probably dodged it, grabbed it, proceeded to beat the living crap out of Pinky. So, got it the less easy way, I think. It didn't look like he had a wound or anything from it, and it looked like there was blood on the bat. So no, there definitely was blood on the bat, and it didn't look like it was hit. So I can only assume. But Hope tries to make her wish, but it doesn't work. And that for her, it's finally accepting that Landon's gone. Because their explanation of it, it's you're a tri-bred, you're poisonous to Malivore, and at the end of the day, I am Malivore's biological son. Like I said, maybe it's just doing the deed was kind of a step further than just to make it. Because I was I felt you guys making out would have been enough to be, but it's once again, maybe fusing with Malivore kind of changed the rules on Landon's body. Now, they never really got into the ins and outs of that, so who knows? I made a whole video, and I talked about it last episode, but I also have a video where I kind of shared my thoughts about it. They didn't really go into the ins and outs of why things were kind of different under these circumstances. Is it simply because they did the deed, so it went a little bit further than just making out? So maybe that, I don't know. I mean, regardless, I don't know if they'll really get into the ins and outs of that, or will they just kind of leave it at that. I think they'll go a little further in the future, but we'll get to that soon enough. But Hope having to accept it, and obviously it's I can't believe it's happening again. It's yeah, has lost too much in a lifetime. To be as young as she is, to have lost her mom, to have lost her dad. Once again, I want to throw out there her uncle. Can't forget about dear Elijah. But obviously, she always had a very complicated relationship with Elijah just because of the way everything played out in the final seasons of the originals. But she's lost a lot, and that kind of, I mean, that's why this is the main reason why she was reluctant to ever get in a relationship, because, you know, she kind of wanted to hold her heart off because she didn't want to get close to people just to end up losing them, and to lose Landon like this, you know. And it's just like, just when it's like, you know, especially in the moment where she was like letting herself be happy for the first time, and it's like, and just when she lets that happiness in, to have it kind of taken away from that, it's taken away from her is so messed up. So, you know, Alaric being there for her, because he's like, I know, he's like, because he's willing to help her do whatever, because he's like, he understands, like, you need to do whatever it takes, you know, in a situation where, when you lose someone you love. He knows, he's been through that pain many times before. And so, for Hope, it's like, I have to stop, and I just have to find my way to kind of keep moving forward with this whole situation. So, there's that. We see Lizzie basically doing the same thing, kind of accepting Josie going to the school, even getting her an outfit. Be like, oh, you can't really go to a new school that has no uniform in a uniform. And it's like, and gives her kind of an outfit, kind of like her way of saying, like, and she even says that I'm not okay with it, but hopefully I'll get there at the point I will be okay with it, you know? Interesting situation between Josie and Ethan, where it was like, oh, hey, like, yeah, my sister was totally into you, and is like, had a huge crush on you. It's like, oh, not huge enough for you to notice, apparently. So, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. She was kind of oblivious that Maya was like super into her, but also she runs into Finch, which I'm wondering, is there going to be more with that? Like, is she just going to be like a normal human, or are we going to find out she's actually a supernatural? Which is also going to be interesting if we cut back and forth, because obviously we haven't technically been to Mystic Falls in years. I mean, granted, it isn't 100% true, because we went there last season when Alaric was working there, but it's still a thing of like, yeah, but still, like spending full time there. We haven't spent time there in, once again, years, so it's going to be crazy if we get time to kind of spend even more time there, if Josie's going to be spending time there. But she met Fitch, who was Maya's ex, and it's like, yeah, she says she kind of got suspended a little bit, and she's kind of doing the tours and stuff now, because she kind of didn't react well when Maya said she was leaving. I'm curious, like, I get the feeling like there's going to be more to that. Like, I don't think it's just going to be that simple of, hey, Josie goes to this new school and she finds a girl she likes. I mean, the complication might be like, hey, Finch is normal, but in the sense that she is just a regular human, but Josie isn't. She might be normal now, but eventually she's going to get her magic back. But I mean, maybe that's going to be the thing of, like, eventually, like, she's in this relationship with someone, and it's like, yeah, but I don't want my magic back, because it might complicate relationships, but it might be a circumstance where she needs to get it back again. I don't know. I'm curious to see how they'll potentially handle, you know, that aspect of the whole situation. We'll kind of see. I'm curious to see what Josie's life at Mystic Falls is going to be like, and find out more about this Finch character and, like, her whole deal. Like, I get the feeling like she's going to be something else, but it could be. I mean, she can't be a Malivore monster, but she might be something else. I mean, maybe she could be, like, in the sense that maybe she is something else that got released from Malivore beforehand. But I doubt that. Or she might, but I was more so referring, like, she might be a witch, vampire, or werewolf or something. Like I said, we'll see. But other than that, we do have the ending, which is like, because at first it's the whole thing about letting go of Landon, you know, and it's like interesting that Hope is kind of letting go, but MG is telling Caleb not to, which I think is interesting. And then we see that Landon is alive, but he's in what appears to be Malivore, and then there's a bright, because we see the item activate, so, and we see Landon kind of see a doorway. So now the big question is, okay, so when he quote-unquote died, did he go back to where he was? And that's inside of Malivore, which would put him in the prison world. My other thought was, could whatever changes happened to him made it so that Landon himself is technically, I'd assume he's inside of Malivore. That's what that kind of, it seems like it's implying. That's probably why you couldn't find him actually in the prison world, no matter where you look, because he went back where he belonged. I mean, like all the monsters, because Landon is Malivore's son, you know. So it was kind of hinting in its own right, because it's like, yeah, you know what happened to me. I'm Malivore's son. So, but it's, to everyone else's, at least in Hope's perception, it's like, I, quote unquote, you died. Not like, oh, you died and popped back into Malivore. It's like, because he's technically a part of Malivore, like the monsters are. So, like I said, it kind of proves a lot of my theories wrong. So it might, but like I said, I'm curious like how much has potentially changed for Landon in that regard. I'm wondering, could it be a situation of my thought was at one point in time, could he have become like a new Malivore within himself? Like, not the sense that like, oh, Malivore is now part of his, like that he himself has become like a separate Malivore. Like he is Malivore, so like there's a potential for him to become his own like Malivore, like an own, golem dimension thing, So I don't know if that, I think this is more so just saying he's inside of Malivore. So when he does manage to pop out, would he pop out inside of the prison dimension? Maybe. I would assume so. It's going to be interesting to see where that whole situation ends up playing out. So find out exactly kind of what went down, especially when everyone else has kind of let go of Landon and Caleb might be the only person who hasn't. We'll see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.